Right now, Ukraine is making a real breakthrough, a missile end for the Kremlin. Washington is raising the stakes. Long-range missiles for the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The West is uniting. Europe and the US are preparing a weapons breakthrough for Ukraine. The Kremlin has been left outside the door, the Caucasus under US protection. Turkey has unexpectedly struck at Russia. Putin is in shock. The Ukrainian Armed Forces have reached as far as Komi and Kazan, and Azerbaijan is ready to arm Ukraine. The meeting of the century. No one expected such a turn of events. Trump, Putin, and Zelensky's secret visit. What will really be decided in Alaska? Breakthrough at Pokrovsk. The truth revealed, the city is holding, Putin's army is stuck, and Ukrainian drones are burning assault units to ashes all along the front line. Shock. Ukrainian Armed Forces drones are destroying Millerovo. Fire, panic, and Kremlin agony. Wagner is losing ground in Africa. Moscow is preparing to export its army for big money, while Russia's economy is bursting at the seams. All this and more in our upcoming episode of Hotspot. The Kremlin is in a panic. The US and Scandinavia are pouring billions into arming Ukraine. Washington is ramping up the military machine for the Ukrainian Armed Forces. A large-scale overhaul of Ukrainian artillery is being launched in the US. Long-range missiles are already on the way.
Almost $500 million for the purchase of American weapons. Norway, Sweden, and Denmark are allocating $486 million to purchase overseas defensive weaponry as part of a NATO initiative. The aid will be provided under the new prioritized Ukrainian Requirement List initiative. Assistance under Pearl will ensure the rapid delivery of weapons and equipment to Ukraine to strengthen air defense, in particular the procurement of missiles for the Patriot system.
This summer, we have witnessed how Russia relentlessly continues its illegal attacks against Ukraine along the front line and against civilian targets in cities. With this contribution, we aim to facilitate Ukraine's rapid access to the necessary equipment, while also strengthening NATO cooperation on Ukraine's defense and ensuring peace on Ukraine's terms. Kure O. Sandvik, Minister of Defense of Norway.
The Netherlands has already funded an aid package of similar value, and in the near future, several more such packages will be provided under Pearl. These aid packages include support for air defense, ammunition, and other essential equipment. Each aid package will have an estimated value of $500 million. In parallel with this initiative, the United States has approved the sale of maintenance services for the 777 howitzers to Ukraine, worth more than $200 million. The agreements consist of two contracts.
The State Department has decided to approve the possible sale to the government of Ukraine abroad of equipment, repair services, and operational support for M777 howitzers and related equipment, totaling about $104 million. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency has provided the required certification notifying Congress.
The deliveries will include technical assistance, training, instructions, and other elements of logistics and support. The main contractor will be BAE Systems UK. The second contract provides for the provision of transportation and logistics services to Ukraine.
The government of Ukraine has requested the purchase of transportation and cargo consolidation services to support security assistance programs, as well as other related elements of logistics and program support. The total estimated cost is $99.5 million. The proposed sale will significantly help to achieve the important foreign policy and national security objectives of the United States by substantially enhancing Ukraine's crucial ability to defend itself effectively.
The administration of US President Trump is also considering the possibility of supplying Ukraine with JSSM cruise missiles for the F-16. The first JSSM missiles have a strike range of about 370 kilometers. More advanced versions are capable of hitting targets at distances of up to 1,000 kilometers.
The JSSM entered service in 2003, combining limited radar evasion capabilities with a high level of targeting accuracy and a warhead payload of 450 kilograms. Currently, this missile is operated by 4 countries, including Poland, which received 110 for its F-16 fighters. Other Cold War-era fighter jets in service with Ukraine, specifically the Su-27 and Su-24M inherited from the Soviet Union, have already been modified to launch the British and French Storm Shadow and Scalp cruise missiles, which have some comparable characteristics to the JSSM.
And although Trump himself said 2 weeks ago that he is not considering supplying Ukraine with long-range missiles, sources in the White House claim that this issue has already been under discussion for some time. And as we know, Trump changes his mind very quickly.
A complete failure for Putin. The alliance between Baku and Yerevan strikes a blow to the Kremlin. Azerbaijan and Armenia have pushed Russia out of the region, the end of Moscow's influence. The Caucasus is now within the orbit of Ankara and Washington. What this will mean for Russia, find out right now.
This agreement will change the Caucasus and put a stranglehold on the Kremlin. The breakdown in relations between Baku and Moscow, along with Turkey and the US supporting reconciliation between the two countries, has changed everything.
I am very proud of these truly courageous and visionary leaders for making the absolutely right choice for the great and resilient peoples of Armenia and Azerbaijan, ensuring a brighter future for all. This will be a historic day for Armenia, Azerbaijan, the United States, and the entire world.
Close borders and long-standing ethnic conflicts are now a thing of the past. The meeting between the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan has normalized relations between Yerevan and Baku. A month prior to this, the final negotiations between the leaders of the two countries had already taken place. They were extensive, held in various formats, and lasted more than 4 hours. The leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan are ready to sign an appeal to dissolve the Aussie Minsk group, which was promoted by the Kremlin. Since 1992, this organization has operated under the joint leadership of the Russian Federation, France, and the United States, acting as a mediator in resolving the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict.
Even we did not truly hope, and indeed no one genuinely hoped, that during these extensive and important talks of ours, there would be any truly concrete and significant progress made.
Armenia and Azerbaijan were at odds for more than 30 years because of Karabakh, but now they're not even discussing it. In March 2025, Armenia and Azerbaijan announced that they had agreed on the text of an agreement to establish peace and interstate relations.
Karabakh is ours. Karabakh is Azerbaijan.
At one time, the Kremlin managed to pit the neighbors against each other over Karabakh. They played their own game and pretended to be peacekeepers for a long time, but were finally exposed. Armenia realized that the Green Putin's little men on military bases were a fiction. Russia was supposedly supposed to participate in all the processes of Armenian-Azerbaijani normalization and was the guarantor. Putin signed documents regarding Karabakh, but even here the Kremlin dictator was thrown overboard. Russia has been completely excluded from this process, even though it had long served as a mediator between the two countries.
Dear Nikolai Vladimirovich, I am very glad to see you.
The death of an Azerbaijani in Russia and the arrests of opposition members in Armenia have only brought to the surface the dissatisfaction and mistrust that had been building up for years.
We are, of course, interested in maximum cooperation across all vectors in all directions. And in addition to multilateral formats, we are still united by very close bilateral relations. That's right. And we intend to continue developing them further.
At the moment, what is important is the decision regarding the opening of the Zangezur corridor. This is a transit route through the territory of Armenia that will connect Azerbaijan with its exclave, the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic.
Armenia is interested in and desires the opening of transport communications in the region, bilateral trade, international connections from Armenia to third countries through the territory of Azerbaijan, from Azerbaijan to third countries through the territory of Armenia, as well as transit exchange. In other words, we are consistently demonstrating our interest and readiness here.
For Baku, this is a strategically important project. Today, the only way to reach the autonomy is mainly by air.
I want to strongly emphasize that in this particular statement, only one specific corridor is explicitly mentioned, and that is indeed the Lakhin corridor, which was originally supposed to be under the direct and complete control of Russian peacekeepers, but unfortunately it has been quite illegally and persistently blocked by Azerbaijan, causing significant concern.
Russia also wanted to benefit here. It saw itself as a mediator in this process as well, one that would profit from the opening of regional communications. Putin planned to deploy the Russian Federation's FSB border service to control the road through Armenia.
The signing of the memorandum not only leads to Armenia's geopolitical isolation, but also threatens relations with Iran, which is categorically opposed to the transfer of the Zangezur corridor.
The road will open, but without Moscow's involvement, and this will be a huge Russian influence in the South Caucasus. That is why Russian patriots are portraying Pashinyan as a traitor.
Pashinyan comes and goes, but Armenia remains. So let's respond calmly to statements from politicians like these.
Baku, as the victor, is dictating the terms to Yerevan. Apparently, the main focus of the memorandum will be on the transfer of the Zangezur corridor, which directly contradicts the interests of the Armenian people. However, for Nikol Pashinyan, these factors apparently are not a priority.
Turkey is also interested in opening the borders between the two countries. and now the friend of both countries has become President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Armenia and Azerbaijan seem to have turned away from hostile Russia for good and are ready to cooperate with the United States.
Sensational news. Ukrainian drones are destroying Russia's rear positions. These are powerful strikes by the Ukrainian Armed Forces at a distance of 2,000 kilometers. UAVs are smashing military targets in Komi and Kazan. The command post of the Russian Federation in the Kherson region has been obliterated. The Kremlin is in a panic. Russia is responding with a new cruise missile. But Azerbaijan is changing the rules of the game and may supply weapons to Ukraine. Watch the explosive details in the following report.
Is the United States' financial funding for Ukraine truly and completely over now? J.D. Vance stated that his country will no longer allocate funds for military aid, as this is now more the responsibility of Europeans.
I think the president believes, and of course I do as well, that we will no longer finance the military business in Ukraine. We want to achieve a peaceful resolution to this issue. If the Europeans want to take the initiative and buy weapons from American manufacturers, we don't mind, but we ourselves will no longer finance it.
But just exactly how truly painful could such significant changes potentially be for Ukraine? That's the main question.
Basically nothing new. We understood that we would have to buy aid and that we would no longer receive anything from the US. To put it simply, we got scammed. Ukraine was left hanging at this point. In other words, we were counting on aid that had already been funded, weapons that had already been produced or were being produced, but we won't get them. If we want to receive them, we have to buy them. Nothing will be free anymore.
Help came from where it was least expected. Azerbaijan may consider lifting the embargo on supplying weapons to Ukraine. And all this happened as a result of Russian strikes on the oil depot of an Azerbaijani company in Odessa.
They deliberately attacked it. At least 5 drones hit the site. So, it was intentional. Can we say it happened by accident? No, it was a deliberate attack. Now, Mr. Aliyev has stated that if the Russian Federation does not calm down, they will lift the embargo specifically on military aid supplies to Ukraine. What does this mean? Most likely, it refers to Soviet-style ammunition that can be produced at Azerbaijani enterprises. Perhaps there are some large stockpiles, but in any case, this would be a significant help for Ukraine.
It seems that Russia has developed a new cruise missile. It was detected during the shelling of Mykolaiv. In terms of appearance, it is compared to the British-French Storm Shadow and conceptually to the Ukrainian Peklo. But the Russians are not only striking Ukraine with missiles, they are also increasingly using drones. Now they have established their first UAV control center in Kamchatka.
In my opinion, this is more of a preparatory step. Another question is, why so far away? Well, maybe they're training some of their, just once again, maybe it's to keep it away from any prying eyes from outsiders. Why Kamchatka specifically? It's hard to say. Well, maybe it's the hills, maybe they're trying to simulate the Donbass region.
And what would Russia be without some bavovna? Ukrainian Shaheds hit the assembly points of Russian Shaheds in Kazan, which by the way is more than 1,000 kilometers from the state border. But that's not all the surprises. An oil refinery in the Russian Republic of Komi, which supplied fuel to the Russian army, was also hit. And the distance to it from the Ukrainian border is about 2,000 kilometers.
Well, it's quite possible that this was, for example, a test flight to figure out what is needed. Like how much fuel to calculate, how much explosives. Well, most likely over time we'll see even longer range strikes. But we have to understand that such strikes will most likely only be carried out against highly explosive targets. For example, there's no point in sending a drone to some factory 2,000 kilometers away because it can't really do anything there. But to blow up something that's highly energy intensive, that's another matter.
It is also known that the Ukrainian Armed Forces carried out a bombing strike on the command post of Russian troops near Oleshki in the Kherson region and destroyed it.
According to preliminary information, about 25 occupiers were killed and at least 11 were wounded. According to intelligence reports, among those eliminated were the commander, the chief of staff, the head of the engineering service, and the commander of one of the battalion's platoons.
In Zaporizhzhia, on the morning of August 10th, Russian forces struck the bus station, where people were injured. According to the latest information, 20 people sustained injuries of varying severity. The strikes also hit the clinic of the Zaporizhzhia Medical University and residential buildings.
Tensions are rising. Trump is kicking Russia out of the Caucasus. Azerbaijan and Armenia have turned their backs on Russia. The Kremlin is furious. Trump and Putin face to face. What will really be decided in Alaska? Is Zelensky in the game? A geopolitical blow is near. Shock, the US is winding down aid to Ukraine. NATO responds harshly. Rutte has challenged the Kremlin. Fiery details, watch right now.
This Friday, Putin and Trump will meet in Alaska. There are many rumors surrounding the upcoming meeting. For example, some say it would be better if Putin met with Zelensky before meeting with Trump, or that all three should meet together at once.
I don't think it would be all that productive. I believe in principle that the President of the United States should be the one to bring these two together. Vladimir Putin has said that he would never sit down at the negotiating table with Zelensky. Now that needs to change. Right now, we are at a point where we are trying to figure out, frankly, the situation and similar things, such as when these three leaders could sit down at the negotiating table and discuss ending this conflict.
There is a lot of talk about the upcoming meeting. European leaders are fully on Ukraine's side. But still, NATO Secretary General Rutte has allowed for the possibility of de facto recognition of Russia's control over parts of Ukraine in a future deal.
Russia controls part of Ukrainian territory. The crucial question will be precisely how to effectively move forward after a potential ceasefire, including what this fundamentally means in terms of comprehensive security guarantees for Ukraine, especially when it comes to the complex issue of disputed territory, and also when it comes to the possible formal recognition in a future binding agreement that the Russian Federation de facto controls a significant part of Ukraine's sovereign territory. This should be exclusively de facto recognition, not political recognition.
Trump's special envoy Witkoff may have misunderstood Putin. Reports that the Russian dictator is ready to give up claims to the territory of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions in exchange for the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Donbass are false.
Previously, there was a situation with Witkoff where the Russian Federation provided him with a translator.
And everyone had already noticed this and told Witkoff that he shouldn't do that. And as for who Witkoff's interpreter was this time, whether he was again provided by the Russian side or not, remains unknown. I wouldn't be surprised if Witkoff was indeed mistranslated. Once again, this is an orchestrated provocation by the Russian Federation.
US Vice President Vance believes that neither Ukrainians nor Russians will be satisfied with the deal to end the war.
If you take the current line of contact between Russia and Ukraine and try to find some negotiated settlement that would satisfy both Ukrainians and Russians, where they could live in relative peace and the killing would stop, it still wouldn't make anyone particularly happy. Both Russians and Ukrainians will probably, in the end, be dissatisfied with it. But I don't think you can sit down and hold these negotiations without the leadership of Donald Trump.
A diplomatic solution has to be a genuine compromise, and everyone involved certainly understands that. But a compromise is not the same as an absolute ultimatum, a Russian ultimatum. So, when Ukraine is told, you must agree to withdraw, say, from the entire territory of the Donetsk region, and then we will see what happens, that is absolutely not a compromise at all.
There are also serious disagreements within the Russian leadership. Kozak, the deputy head of Putin's administration and his close associate, proposed to stop the war and start peace negotiations since the invasion of Ukraine was a mistake. It was precisely for this that Putin stripped him of some of his powers.
But it's clear that the Russian economy is losing ground more quickly. We are already seeing forecasts of zero growth until the end of the year. And it's obvious that right now the position of the side that is eager for quick negotiations and an end to the war is strengthening. But that doesn't mean Putin is listening to that side. Nevertheless, this shows the different viewpoints in the Kremlin.
In addition, Trump himself landed a low blow on Putin ahead of the upcoming meeting. Azerbaijan and Armenia made peace in the US, completely ignoring Russia as a permanent partner and mediator. Russia's influence in the Caucasus is fading away.
Armenia and Azerbaijan pledged to permanently cease hostilities, open up trade, establish transport links and diplomatic relations, and respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
This is yet another significant and profound geopolitical failure for the Kremlin, which will undoubtedly have extensive and far-reaching consequences for Moscow's overall position and influence in the strategically important South Caucasus region, and in general, for its crucial role as a key party demonstrably capable of effectively acting as a mediator to achieve tangible and lasting results.
Azerbaijan, by the way, will allocate $2 million for the restoration of bombed infrastructure in Ukraine. Also, Baku is ready to lift the ban on arms supplies if Russia continues to strike facilities belonging to Azerbaijani companies on Ukrainian territory.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The meat grinder near Pokrovsk. Ukrainian drones are turning assault troops into ashes. The Kremlin is in a panic. Russian fake news about the city's fall has collapsed. The occupiers are in shambles. The Ukrainian Armed Forces are wiping out enemy sabotage groups and assault units all along the front line. Syrskyi is firm. The war will end only on Ukraine's terms.
Pokrovsk is completely under the control of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Ukrainian paratroopers have shown footage of the destruction of yet another sabotage group that tried to break into the city. For over a month now, the occupying forces have not stopped trying to break through to Pokrovsk. Russian war correspondents write that the Ukrainian armed forces are suffering huge losses while the aggressor's army is heroically advancing and the defense of Pokrovsk is about to fall.
Fierce fighting near Pokrovsk. The brave are wiping out Ukrainian equipment and personnel from the face of the earth. The situation remains tense in the Pokrovsk direction, where units of the center troop grouping continue their successful offensive. On August 8th, our fighters once again demonstrated high effectiveness in destroying enemy fortifications.
But for over a month now, all attempts by the Russian army to enter the city have been in vain. In the past 24 hours, there have been 150 clashes, a third of them specifically in the Pokrovsk direction. As of today, Pokrovsk is completely under the control of the Ukrainian army. In the Siversk area, also in Donetsk region, the so-called Siversk salient is preventing the Russian army from advancing. This is the reaction of Russian assault troops after yet another failed offensive in this direction.
So, how's it going, Clay? His whole leg, man, bro. That's it. Poor guy. His whole leg. Stepped on it. How are you, brother? How's it going?
Let's listen. I think, I didn't see anything.
Here we are. We wanted to go in as groups and then they hit us. And now we still can't get back out.
The Ukrainian Armed Forces defense at this location is preventing the occupiers from advancing towards Sloviansk and Lyman.
The objective before us is to secure a foothold on the outskirts of the city of Siversk. And most likely, considering that unfortunately the enemy is making gains from the direction of the Serebryansk forestry, the plan is to try to bypass the city altogether. And today, from the direction of Serebryanka and Hrayhorivka, the enemy will attempt to bypass Siversk.
The goal of the Russian army is to eliminate this salient. Ukrainian drones are destroying assault units both day and night. On the Zaporizhzhia front, Ukrainian drones have become a real nightmare for the Russian army. FPV drones are targeting not only Russian armed forces positions, but even their vehicles.
There goes an FPV drone, headed for us. Looks like it didn't explode. Something is still blinking. I know what to do with it. Something's buzzing over there.
According to the Institute for the Study of War, despite colossal losses, the Russian army has not been able to advance in the Zaporizhzhia region.
Russian troops attacked northeast of Huliaipole in the areas of Zeleny Pol, Novodorivka, Novopil, Timirivka, and toward Novoivanivka, as well as east of Huliaipole in the areas of Zeleny High and Malinivka, but did not advance.
Unfortunately, the Russian army managed to occupy the first settlement in the Dnipropetrovsk region. These updated figures are provided by the Deep State resource. This is the village of Dakhna. However, there is still no official confirmation from the General Staff. Despite the difficult situation along the entire front line, the Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, stated in his recent interview that the war will end solely on the terms of the Ukrainian army. The war must end in a way that benefits us, and we must do everything to achieve this. We must win, not retreat. We must destroy the enemy. We must inflict such losses that the enemy is forced to end this war and do so not from a position of strength but on our terms. And most likely, these words have a solid foundation, unlike the propaganda statements from the Russian side.
Ukrainian drones blew up Millerovo. Fire at the military airfield. The Kremlin is in a panic. The Wagner PMC is losing Africa. Putin is raising the stakes. Fiery details of what is happening on the battlefield are coming up in the report.
The threat of camper vans. No, this isn't the plot of another blockbuster, but a new phobia among Russians. Information is spreading online that allegedly, on the night of August 8th, drones and FPVs were launched from a Toyota cargo vehicle. And while Russians were trying to figure out what these haunted houses were, more precisely houses with drones, those very drones were striking strategic targets in Russia. Thus, at night, drones arrived in Millerovo, Rostov region. The target was most likely the local military airfield. Explosions were heard in the city at night, after which local residents saw a glow from the fire.
The extensive and meticulously planned large-scale SBU operation, codenamed Web, which was executed deep within the geographical confines of Russian territory, unequivocally demonstrated the significant and impactful potential for effectively employing, unconventional and agile guerrilla tactics against crucial and strategically vital military targets, thereby highlighting a new dimension in modern warfare. This is a serious threat for the Russians because it doesn't necessarily have to be a motorhome. You see, right now, the Russians are absolutely fixated. If a trailer or even a motorhome is driving by, that is precisely the primary source of the perceived threat.
The Russians claim that their air defense repelled all the attacks. But as we know, videos on the internet don't burn, unlike the fuel tanks at the attacked GSMRT base.
Before actually striking Ukraine, these formidable planes have to meticulously take off, then carefully land at the strategically important Engels air base, subsequently load the powerful missiles that have been meticulously prepared there, then refuel, and finally take off again, fly all the way to the vast Caspian Sea, and then precisely launch the devastating missiles from that location. So the Engels Air Base still undeniably remains a critically key point for orchestrating these massive and impactful missile strikes.
There is news about yet another expulsion of the Wagner PMC, this time from Africa. Russia is insisting on winding down the activities of the Wagner private military company in the Central African Republic and replacing it with the Africa Corps, which is controlled by the Russian Ministry of Defense. This was reported by the Associated Press, citing sources. In addition, Moscow is reportedly demanding that the security services it provides be paid for not with natural resources as before, but in cash.
The Wagner PMC is conducting the main combat operations against the rebels. And in fact, the local government relies specifically on the actions of the Wagner PMC. In addition, I would note that the Wagner PMC maintains a presence directly on the territory of the Republic of Belarus, with estimates ranging from 4,000 to 5,000 people.
The Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has switched from anger to mercy, or rather, is creating the appearance of doing so in order to continue deceiving US President Donald Trump. To this end, Putin even agreed to meet with Trump to discuss the war in Ukraine.
By effectively raising the stakes, the Russian dictator is well aware that there are enormous problems within the Russian economy. In July alone, the budget deficit increased by 1.2 trillion rubles.
Lying and wriggling out of things, that's so typical of the Kremlin. That's how, thanks to deception, Russians managed to circumvent sanctions and even purchase equipment from the German company Siemens for the state explosives manufacturer.
Even in today's globalized world, it's extremely difficult to prevent purchases for the Russian Federation's military-industrial complex, which uses either shell companies or, accordingly, intermediary countries. In other words, necessary raw materials and equipment for the Russian Federation's military-industrial complex are being purchased through third countries, where the end user is listed not as the Russian side, but say a company in Pakistan, or in China, or in a number of other countries in the Near and Middle East.
On the night of August 8th, Russia once again attacked Ukraine from the air. The enemy used 108 aerial attack assets. Air Defense Forces neutralized 82 targets, including 3 jet-powered drones.
These are not entirely new drones, these are significantly upgraded old ones, specifically upgraded older models. But indeed, their overall level of danger is steadily increasing. Look, up until this point in time, the enemy has mainly used Shaheds equipped with gasoline, internal combustion engines. They are relatively slow flying, quite slow targets. That's precisely why the countermeasures that were employed and utilized against them were in essence quite similar and about the same.
Nevertheless, Ukrainian defenders managed to repel enemy attacks both in the air and on the ground. Russia continues to suffer colossal losses in its war against Ukraine. According to reports from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, over the past day, the Ukrainian army eliminated 1,040 occupiers, as well as 7 tanks and armored fighting vehicles.
That's all for now, and for more fiery news from the front, tune in to the next episode.